After 17 years of loyalty, I walked into work expecting another ordinary day, completely unaware that everything was about to change in a single moment. My boss called me into the office with a strange look on his face, and before I could even sit down, he told me I was fired. No explanation, no warning. Just a cold decision that erased nearly 2 decades of commitment. But as I stood there, shocked and silent, one thing kept me calm. They had absolutely no idea that I'd been preparing for this moment for months. They thought they blindsided me. But they were wrong. For 17 years, that job was a major part of my life. I showed up early, stayed late, covered shifts, trained new employees, and solved problems that weren't even mine to fix. I wasn't just working there. I was invested, committed, loyal. So when I walked in one morning and was told, without warning, that my position no longer existed, the shock hit me like a punch to the chest. No meeting, no explanation, no appreciation for nearly 2 decades of dedication. Just a quick sentence that ended everything. But here's the part they didn't know. While I was giving my best to the company, I was also quietly preparing for the day things might fall apart. I wasn't relying on them as much as they believed. They thought they had complete power over my future. They thought I'd fall apart. What happened next proved just how wrong they were. The morning started like any other, quiet, predictable, almost boring in the way that routines often are. I grabbed my usual coffee, nodded at the security guard, and walked toward my department. Everything looked normal. Phones ringing, people chatting, papers stacked in the same messy way they always were. Nothing hinted that the next few minutes would wipe out 17 years of my life with a single sentence. As I logged into my system, I noticed a message from my boss. "Come to my office." No reason, no context, but the tone felt off. Short, cold, almost mechanical. I walked down the hallway thinking maybe there was an issue with a project, or maybe I was needed to fix another problem the way I always did. But when I stepped inside, his expression told me instantly this wasn't about work. He didn't even invite me to sit. He just cleared his throat and said, "We've decided to let you go." No build-up, no explanation. Just those words, thrown out like they meant nothing. I remember feeling everything and nothing at the same time. Shock, anger, confusion, but also a strange clarity. Like my mind separated from the moment. To protect me, I asked why, and he simply said, "Restructuring." A scripted line. A lazy excuse. I had given 17 years, and they couldn't even personalize the reason. As he handed me the termination papers, he avoided eye contact. That told me everything. He knew it was wrong, but he had his orders. People who had relied on me daily suddenly pretended they didn't see me packing up. A few whispered, "I'm so sorry," but no one dared speak loud enough to be noticed. I walked out holding a cardboard box, but something inside me was surprisingly calm, almost steady. Because while they thought they were ending my story, I knew something they didn't. I wasn't walking out empty-handed. I had leverage they never imagined. 17 years is long enough to build a life around a workplace. I remembered my first day. Nervous, eager, hopeful. Back then, the company felt like a family. Managers knew your name, co-workers helped each other, and effort actually mattered. Over time, that culture faded, slowly replaced by cold policies, new management, and people who valued numbers more than human beings. But I stayed. I stayed because I believed my loyalty meant something. I became the person everyone relied on. When someone quit suddenly, I covered. When a crisis hit the department, I fixed it. When new employees felt lost, I trained them, even when it wasn't my responsibility. I was the unofficial problem solver. The one who knew the system inside out. The one they called on weekends. The one who never said no. And for years, I thought that kind of dedication would protect me. I remembered countless nights staying late, not for overtime, but because I genuinely cared. I remembered missing family gatherings, skipping vacations, eating dinner at my desk more times than I can count. I invested so much of myself into making the company run smoothly that I barely noticed how much they took me for granted. They praised me when it was convenient. They used me when they needed something. But loyalty, I learned, is only valued when it benefits them. As new managers came in, things changed quickly. They didn't care about history. They didn't care that I held everything together. They only cared about cutting costs, impressing upper management, or showing they could make bold decisions. I became another number on a spreadsheet, a salary to eliminate. A long-term employee who had become too expensive. Looking back, the signs were there. Fewer conversations, reduced responsibilities, subtle shifts in tone. But I ignored them, believing I was too valuable to disregard. I was wrong. Standing outside that building with my box in hand, I realized the truth. I had given them 17 years, but they had given me nothing permanent in return. And that painful realization made my next move even more powerful. What my boss didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had been preparing for a moment like this long before it happened. Not because I expected to be fired, but because I had learned the hard way that no job is guaranteed, no matter how loyal you are. Years ago, after watching coworkers get pushed out without warning, I made a decision. I would never rely on one employer for my entire future. I spent evenings learning new skills, deep skills the company had never bothered to teach or pay for. I took online courses, built a portfolio, and slowly started freelance work on the side. At first, it was small, one client here, one project there. But soon, word spread. People liked my work, and requests increased. I didn't brag about it. I didn't post about it. I kept it silent because I knew someday silence would become my strength. On top of that, I kept documentation, emails, timelines, evidence of the extra responsibilities I handled without compensation, not to use against them, but because experience had taught me. Companies forget your contributions the moment you stop making them. But I didn't forget. I kept everything organized. By the time they fired me, I already had steady clients, a growing income stream, and a skill set far beyond what the company ever realized. They assumed I was dependent on them. They assumed they could take away my stability. What they didn't know was that I had already built a second foundation beneath my feet. The moment I left the building, my phone buzzed. 3 client messages asking when I was available for new projects. Ironically, I was free immediately. Within a week, I made more money from my side work than I earned in an entire month at my old job. And here's the twist. One of the company's biggest clients reached out to me directly, asking if I could work with them independently. Apparently, my former employer never appreciated me, but their clients certainly did. My leverage wasn't revenge. It was preparation. And that preparation turned their attempt to break me into the best opportunity of my life. It didn't take long for the cracks to show after I left. The department that once depended on me started falling behind, almost instantly. Deadlines slipped. Confusion spread. New staff didn't know how to manage the systems I had maintained for years because the company never bothered to document anything. They had always assumed I would handle it. Without me, everything started to collapse. 3 weeks later, I got a message from a former coworker. "Everything's a mess. Management is panicking. They're trying to replace you, but nobody can do what you did." I wasn't surprised. I had carried more than they ever acknowledged. But the real turning point came when one of their major clients contacted me, not through the company, but directly. They told me they had noticed errors, delays, and confusion since my departure. They said my former employer tried to assure them everything was under control, but clearly, it wasn't. Then they made a request. "Would you be willing to handle our projects independently?" That single message changed everything. I took the offer, professionally, legally, and with no resentment. And once that client shifted to me, others followed. My workload grew so quickly that I had to start turning down requests. Meanwhile, the company kept losing clients, trying desperately to cover the damage. One day, my boss contacted me. His message was short, almost hesitant. "Would you be open to consulting for us temporarily? We need help stabilizing operations." For a moment, I sat there staring at the message. This was the same man who had fired me without explanation. The same man who couldn't meet my eyes on the day he let me go. Now he needed me. The company needed me. I declined politely, but firmly. Not out of anger, out of growth. Because by then, I wasn't the employee who walked out holding a cardboard box. I was running my own business, making more money than ever, working on my own terms, with people who respected my expertise. They fired me, thinking they were ending my future. But in truth, they freed me to build a better one they could never control.